everyone, and welcome to the webinar Child-Teacher Dialogue, a participative approach to making lessons more inclusive. My name is Iva Perković. I'm from the network of education policy centers, and I will be your host today. This webinar is one of the activities implemented within the project called Hand in Hand, empowering teachers across Europe to deal with social, emotional, and diversity-related career challenges. So the focus of this project is on the teachers and actually on the supporting teachers' development of their social, emotional competencies as well as their diversity awareness, all in order to improve them, empower them for the complexity of the everyday working life, and to enable them to deal flexibly with the new arising challenges. For more information about the project, I will link our official project webpage in the chat later so that you can explore it a bit. And today we will focus on a bit different approach of supporting teachers in responding to learners' diversity in the classrooms. And that is by implementing a collaborative action research model called Inclusive Inquiry. For that reason, we have here with us today representatives of the University of Graz, which is our project partner leading the quality assurance of the project, and they are also responsible for the implementation and the evaluation of our program in the Austrian schools. Here with us today are Lisa Paleczek and Barbara Gasteiger-Klicpera. I'm hoping I pronounced it all right. So as I mentioned, they are our colleagues from the University of Graz, from the Department of the Education, Research and Teacher Education, from the Inclusive Education Unit. Lisa is an assistant professor. She also works for the Research Center for Inclusive Education. She studied psychology and educational research and got her PhD in the inclusive education. Her research focuses on inclusive teaching and learning, assessment, reading and language abilities, social emotional skills, digital skills, and teacher education. Welcome, Lisa.
Thank you.
And also we have here with us today Barbara, who is a professor and head of the Inclusive Education Unit. She's also the founder and part of the steering committee of the Research Center for Inclusive Education. And her research focuses on inclusive education, learning disabilities, diversity, health literacy, as well as the interventions for children with emotional and social difficulties. Welcome, Barbara.
Hello to all you. Thank you.
So our lecturers today will present us with this participative approach that is based on the child-teacher dialogue, which requires teachers and students to participate actively as research partners, all alongside the colleagues from the universities, with the aim of improving the classroom practices and making them more inclusive. So before I give the floor to Lisa and Barbara, I want to thank them once again for accepting our invitation to present. I also want to thank all of you participants for joining us, and I kindly ask you just to keep your microphones turned off during the presentation. You can write your questions and reflections or comments in the chat, and after the presentation we will have some time for questions and discussions. I will now stop sharing my screen and give the floor to Lisa and Barbara.
Thank you very much. So we will start with our presentation. A warm welcome also from our side to you all. We will present you some results of the project Reaching the Hard to Reach, funded by the Erasmus Plus program. And to give you an overview what you will expect today, we will talk a little bit about inclusion in the education system, because to frame this project, it's necessary to know a little bit what can we do to enhance inclusion. We will show you the project, Reaching the Hard to Reach, and especially the methods we applied. And one of the important methods is the inclusive inquiry method. We will talk about students as researchers, participative research with students, and we will show you the concept from planning education to teaching to analyzing. And we will talk about the student-teacher dialogue. And at the end, we will have time to discuss your questions. So when we talk about enhancing inclusion in the education system, it is important to be aware that when we want to implement inclusion, we have two purposes to follow: equality versus equity. We have to think a little bit about these two differences. When you look at the image, you see the first image, and in this image, it is assumed that everyone will benefit from the same supports. All children are treated equally. And as we know, this is not enough when we want to enhance our school system and we want to realize our vision of inclusion. In the second image, you have individuals that are given different supports to make it possible for them to have equal access to the game. So they are being treated equitably. And only in the third image, all three can see the game without any support or accommodations because the cause of the inequity was addressed. And this is a very important change of view to address the systemic barriers and to remove the systemic barriers in our school system. And this is so the aim we have when we talk about inclusion. How can we think about changing our education system? What are the levers for change? So you see in the middle of this graph, the school, we want to develop the school, we review and develop the school, and we have the schools in the middle of the principles on the one side and the evidence on the other side. So the principles which are important are inclusion on the one side, and of course also equity on the other side. So we try to realize in our schools inclusion and equity. To realize this, it's important to look at the evidence, not only to talk theoretically, but really found inclusion in the schools practically. And to do this, we have, and to force this, we have the education department on the one side to help also, and the community on the other side. So we have many people in the community to foster inclusion, to help realizing inclusion. And to managing this change, we have two main aspects. On the one side, the clarity of purpose. So we should see inclusion and equity as principles that inform all aspects of the educational policy rather than as separate strands. So the policy must be aligned with inclusion and equity at the same time. And we engage with evidence, so we look at the strengths that can be built upon and barriers that need to be overcome in order to create policies that are inclusive and equitable. And with our project, ReHari, Reaching the Hard to Reach, we tried to do this. It's a project which was initiated by Kiki Messiu and Mel Ainsko. It lasted from September 2017 till December 2020, and it was implemented in 5 countries. In each country with 1 university and 1 hub school. In England, it was the Southampton University and the Woodswood Primary School. In Denmark, it was the Aarhus University with the Niva Primary School. In Portugal, with the University of Algarve and the Iprosa School. In Spain, the Autónoma University of Madrid and the CEIP Aldebaran primary school. And in Graz, it was our university and the Volksschule Schönau. So the project was implemented in each country with one university and with one school. And this is very important that it was a joint development, not from the university. The university supported the schools in implementing the model, but the main project was conducted and led by the schools. The main research question was how can we reach out to all learners? So how we can design lessons to include all learners, especially those that are seen as hard to reach. And the method used was the inclusive inquiry. And this inclusive inquiry model is a model for development of learning and teaching. To discuss the project aims, we had 5 project aims. The first aim was to respond to learners' diversity in inclusive ways through active participation of children. So we included the children in the development of the lessons. The second aim was to enhance the access, the participation and learning performance of all children, ensuring that no child is marginalized. So the access, the participation and the learning performance was important. Sometimes inclusive education is thought by downgrading of performance of the children. And our aim was to have high levels of performance for all children and to ensure that all children can learn at their level, but all learn at a high level. To realize this, we used a research-based model of teacher professional development that encouraged dialogue between children and teachers. So a main aspect of the project was the dialogue between children and teachers, so that the teaching really was aligned to the necessities and to the profile of the children, to the learning profile of the children. To do this, it was necessary to design new techniques for generating the views of younger children, including ways of involving them in carrying out research in their schools. So the children were included in the research in their schools, and they were the researchers in their schools. And the last aspect was to measure the impact of our program using such approaches on teachers' thinking and practices and on students' engagement. So we used approaches on attitudes and on behaviors. The question maybe each of you has in mind is, who are the children we address? Who are the children hard to reach? And we know that every person can be hard to reach at some point in time. Each of us can be hard to reach when one of us is in a situation where it is maybe personally in a different situation, maybe then he or she is hard to reach. So we must change the perspective, and we have to not to focus on the student, but to focus on the lesson. So we think the lesson may be hard to reach for some students. And the purpose of the project is to design lessons which are easy to reach for the students. So it is about avoiding stigmata, it is about considering contextual factors, and to taking into account pupils who do not fit in a certain category. So not to think about categories of children, but more to think about including all children, to have lessons easy accessible and lessons where each child can participate easily. That means we want to plan lessons that are reachable for all students in a class, rather than identifying students who have difficulties in following lessons. So it's about having lessons accessible for all. How is this possible? The method is inclusive inquiry. Inclusive inquiry is a model of teacher development. It means it's a model of lesson-centered in-service training in school. The lessons are developed cooperatively between 2 or 3, normally 3 teachers. And we implement a model where the lessons are planned, the lessons are developed jointly together from these teachers, but also together with the students. We have a teacher trio in each school, a so-called teacher trio, and the students in the schools. We plan the lessons together, we observe the lessons, we implement the lessons. One implements the lessons, the other observe, and afterwards we analyze the lesson together. We engage with students' views in a way that the students are part of this process. The students are part of the planning the lessons, the students are part of observing the lessons and also of analyzing the lessons. We learn from the experiences from the students and the teachers, and together we develop inclusive practices where each child and each also the hard to reach children can participate in the lessons. So when we design the lessons, we have the three steps: plan, teach, evaluate. When we plan the lessons, first it's necessary to train the student researchers because the students are not used to be researchers in school. Sometimes they feel a little bit uncomfortable to be the researchers, and on the other side also they love to be researchers and they love to learn from another side of view. So we have the co-planning of one lesson by 3 teachers and 9 student researchers. So from each class, 1 teacher and 3 researchers, with the aim to share the expertise as to how to involve all students in the class from the teacher side, but also from the student side. We teach then the research lessons in turn. One teacher begins and then the next and the next. With the other 2 teachers and the 6 students observe the class. The student researchers also have the possibility not only they self observe the class, but also they interview their peers, the other students in class. And after the lessons, we implement the student-teacher dialogue, where the students as well as the teachers together reflect the lesson and they think about aspects which were very inclusive and where all could learn, and which were the aspects in the lesson, during the lesson, where some of the students could not participate and where some of the students were a little bit aside. Then they think about the adaptation of the lesson plan. They adapt the lesson plan so that it's a little bit more inclusive and where more students can participate. And this evaluation process, and then the lesson is implemented. And after the second time, it continues with the reflection, and then it's implemented a third time. So we have a circle where after each teaching, the lesson is reflected, one thing is adapted, and then the lesson is taught, and then it's adapted. So we have 3 circles. After teaching the lessons 3 times, we discuss the impact on the class and the teachers, and we discuss questions, what have we learned about responding to student diversity. And when we look at this circle in the class, we have the circle in the class for developing the practices. And on one side, and on the other side, we have the development of understandings. So reaching the hard to reach is on the one side, a development of practices But the action research means also that we develop understanding. We develop understanding about how we can implement lessons that are accessible for all children. So we develop practices from the existing practices to the research lessons, research about planning, teaching, and evaluating. And we have more inclusive practices on the one side, and we have multiple links to the research to understand which procedures and which practices in the classes are more inclusive than others. And also on the understanding side, we depart from research questions, we implement observations, we implement focus groups and surveys, we analyze those, and we contribute to knowledge also on a more academic level. So this is shortly our model we implemented in schools, and Lisa will now show you the materials we developed in this project.
Thank you. So we were thinking of how to show you the materials. We had several ideas in mind, but I think I will just show you our website and show you where to find the materials, and just scroll through some of the materials because we produced massive of materials free to use for you. You can always interrupt me and ask questions that we can solve immediately, because you also might ask afterwards, but I think some questions can be solved in the very moment. We also did some screenshots on the slides. So I don't know, Eva, probably you will somehow share the slides with the participants afterwards, or not. If so, you have the screenshots on the slides. And I'm not sure if we will get there. We'll see, however it works. We also have some results of reactions of the students and the teachers of the accompanying research we did. But first things first, I will show you the materials we developed. I just need to get out of the presentation. Can you see the website now? Great. Okay. So if you put in, I can put it into the chat, so you can also, where's the chat here? Go. Have a look later on. Maybe you stay with me first and have a look later on. So on this website, you have the all of the publications. What I will show you today is the Inclusive Inquiry, Training Students to be Researchers Manual, and Students' Voices Toolkit. Apart from these, you can also find accounts of developments in the 5-country network. So like Barbara told you, 5 countries participated, and in the accounts you can see how the implementation went in the specific countries, because all the countries have different national policies, education systems, and so on. That's the same thing we are experiencing in the Hand-in-Hand Empowering Teachers project, and you need to consider the context when implementing something. So that might be interesting for you as well. First of all, I've opened it already. You click on the Inclusive Inquiry Guide, for example, and then you can find the Inclusive Inquiry Guide in all our project languages. So I will show it in English, obviously, but it also exists in German, Portuguese, Danish, and Spanish. We always have the guide like this, and like a booklet to download. I will first show it like this. I've opened it somewhere. Wait. Yeah, I've downloaded it for the 5th time now, but I can open it through the downloads now. Okay. Yeah. So as you can see, it has 28 pages, and these 28 pages follow a certain routine. And I will show you what routine that is. So in this Inclusive Inquiry, a step-by-step guide for teachers, you will find the process Barbara was talking about, the plan, teach, analyze process. The process when children and teachers plan the lesson together, they implement it, they analyze it, and they re-plan it and re-teach it. This process is always showed with examples. So for example, the plan phase has several, yeah, can you see it now? Yeah. The plan phase has several steps. So in the first step, for example, you as a teacher, join with 2 other teachers to carry out the action research, the teacher trio we were talking about. And each of these sub-steps has a description and is accompanied by examples from the different countries, because there was the plan, not this plan how to plan the lesson, but the plan how to implement the whole project. And of course, we had to adapt it in different countries because the situations were different. The classroom sizes were different. Sometimes teachers from various grades worked together. In other schools, teachers from the same grade, like there was 3 third grade classrooms and they worked together. So we had to adapt these steps, and that's what you actually can see in the examples with the countries. So you as a teacher trio agree on which lesson will be the lesson of choice. Like I told you, we had teachers of the same grade, but also teachers from grade 1, grade 2, and grade 3 working together and planning a lesson that could be implemented in each grade in the same way, just to make it accessible. So it could be mathematics, it could be reading lesson, it could be a content lesson, whatever you decide. And then you have got all these sub-steps, again, explained like this. I will just scroll through them. My computer lets me, yeah. After the planning phase, you have the teaching phase. So you use the lesson plan in your classroom while the others are watching you, observing you, and observing the other students. And in many cases, also the student researchers, like Barbara said already, interviewed their peers afterwards. Like, what did you like about the lesson? How did you learn in the lesson? What supported your learning or what hindered your learning? Student researchers also had to somehow put down notes. As you can imagine, in grade 1, that might be difficult for them, but still they put down notes, they did some drawings just to join the discussion about the lesson afterwards. So you would implement the lesson with your class. You can see the various examples of the different countries as well. I don't know, it's really slow. You can see that probably. I will just open it as a PDF, not online. I will show you in a sec through another document. Later on, with another document, I will show you how the students collected the views of all students in the classroom. There could be different, there could be interviews, or it could be a summary after the lesson, but I will show you with the student voice toolkit afterwards. After teaching the lesson, the student researchers and the teachers got together and analyzed the lesson. This process was always initiated by the teacher who actually taught the lesson. So he or she went first and thought about what was inclusive in the lesson, or which parts of the lesson worked very well for the students, or when they could feel that they lost some students on the way in terms of concentration or motivation. And only after the teacher who actually taught this lesson had this summary, the others joined and told him or her, or discussed their observations and their thoughts. So the aim was to adapt the lesson, at least one little thing in the lesson, to make the lesson more inclusive. So to give you an example, I can remember from one Austrian school, they did some vocabulary lesson, and the teacher explained, like it was a grade 1, and the teacher explained for like 15 minutes. He was doing a monologue on the blackboard. So you could see the students dropping out of his monologue and not participating anymore, or being hard to reach because the lesson was not reachable. So everybody observed that, and also the teacher felt that. But usually you just carry on in your teaching life, and you just do not have a lot of time to reflect it. You do not have a lot of time to adapt the things and to really look for some while on the little things. So they changed the lesson to a more interactive lesson, and where the students had only a brief welcoming, and then they could start working in different stations. They could move and stuff like that, because that was also the response from the student peers, that they would like to move and have more action in the lesson. So they adapted the lesson, and in the second this time, the lesson went way better, also in a grade 1, and they were really proud. The students were proud because they had the idea to adapt it, and they felt co-responsible for the lesson. So when you're discussing the lesson, you're not criticizing the teacher, you're sort of criticizing the lesson plan that you built together. So it's not something one teacher did, but all of you as a group. So you can try to adapt the lesson plan. Exactly. So now it should be easier to share. So I think I could give you an impression on how this document is built and structured, where you find the examples and the steps. Yeah, and later on you can have a look if you have questions, because we don't have a lot of time to show you all we did in 3 years. So if you have any questions afterwards, you just contact us, and we are happy to explain things in more detail. Okay, so the second thing I would like to show you, are there any questions right now? I'm not too fast. Everybody's still with me? Or is the presentation hard to reach? Okay. So another document we did in the project is how to prepare students to be researchers. I have to tell you something about Austria. Our school was really inclusive. In the project, it was supposed to be 3 students, that they have a special treatment, let's put it like that. And 3 students should be prepared to be researchers. Austria did it in a different way. We trained all students of the whole classroom to be researchers. So everybody knew what was happening. And we just chose, for one research lesson, we chose 3 students to observe, but the others also had a researcher sort of certificate. They were researchers, and it was just a coincidence that these 3 students actually did the research then. But I think it was a really nice and inclusive way of training the researchers. So in this guidance manual, you can find a lot of content on how to train the students for being researchers. For example, I will just scroll that. Yeah, the structure is again the planning, the training of the student researchers. Then you have information on the different training sessions, and you have information on how to collect or gather data from the other students who are not student researchers in this very lesson. So I will skip the first part and just show you some things in the second part. So again, you have these accounts in each step. You have the accounts on how England, for example, realized the training of the research students, or how Austria realized it. So we told the children, or we explored with the children how participating, how they could practice observation, how they could observe the lesson without observing the teacher or one single student, but the lesson as a whole, the whole classroom. And we gave them some tools on how they could realize this. For example, I noticed how can you see that the lesson is not inclusive? I noticed that some students made noise, were attentive or were not attentive, were doing something else, or didn't understand what they had to do. So all these are hints the students had to find that the lesson is not inclusive enough. So they could take notes, or they could draw whatever they observed, depending on their age. So the age group was from 6 to 10 in this project. I think we didn't mention that, did we, Barbara? It was from 6 to 10, so it was primary school. So the students could interview their peers and ask them if they liked the lesson or not, or they could ask them like why they couldn't learn or what prevented their learning. So they had, for example, a questionnaire: how do you prefer to work? These questionnaires were also used before actually preparing the lessons. So they wanted to find out with their student peers what each child needed to learn. I will show you some pictures and stuff they produced afterwards. So do you need noise, or do you need silence? Do you need a break? How is the seating arrangement? Do you prefer to move or to be seated, or to have different ways of learning? Exactly. And how can you work with your children on how they learn well? That's what you learn in the Students' Voices Toolkit. That's another document we did in our project. There, in this document, you've got various activities from the different countries and a detailed description how to realize these activities. I will just show you some examples, because for details you need to open these documents by yourself. So yeah, you always have photos. I will show you the Austrian activities. For example, you can collect students' opinion on the lesson or on the learning with these jars or classes, where they can put in their feedback to the lessons in an anonymous way, because they do not feel comfortable to, they always say, criticize the teacher, but to enter in that dialogue. So you can do it like that, and then the children also see and notice that you changed something in the lesson because of their feedback, which they really appreciated. And for all the different activities, you've got some photos that show how it went in the classroom. So, for example, here the children could put a post-it if they understood well, or if they still have some questions, or if they struggled or not. That's just different ways how to collect the student voices. Exactly. Okay, I will just share the slides again to show you some nice pictures. On the slides, you have the way to get to the documents, and it's more or less what I told you right now and what I showed you again on the slides. And we have this film to show you in a second. I just wanted to show you some pictures. Yeah, for example, this, what supports my learning was the question, and the students could put down different things. So here on this sheet, you can see order, help from other kids. So we had helper kids. This specific classroom had helper kids that helped the others. A good seat, listening, silence, more time, and noise is hindering. And also sweets. See, they couldn't spell noise, so they draw it. But they could spell Süßigkeiten, which is sweets. Here, another example. So children on their level of ability could communicate and could show what they needed or what they did not need. Here they could do the dots on what they need, if they need more light or need no noise or more noise or whatever. So you can see it already worked with really, really young children. You don't need to be an expert in writing or reading to do that. You just need to trust your children. And that's actually what our teachers told us afterwards. They were really surprised on how well it worked. And I think before showing you the results of our, or some of the results of our research, I think, Barbara, we should show the film. It shows it really well, how it went in the different countries. But I need Eva to share the film, because we tried already and I can't share the sound. So Eva will share the film.
Throughout Europe, teachers are faced with increasingly diverse groups of students, and one of the biggest challenges facing teachers is that of including all children in lessons, particularly those who might be seen as hard to reach. These might be, for example, migrants, refugees, or students with disabilities, as well as others who might be overlooked. In this video, we explain what happened as primary schools in 5 different countries carried out action research to develop a strategy for fostering more inclusive ways of working. This led to the development of a new approach, inclusive inquiry. Inclusive inquiry involves a series of interconnected processes. Central to these are discussions amongst teachers and their students about how to make lessons more inclusive. This involves children becoming researchers who learn how to use research techniques to gather the views of their classmates, as well as observing lessons. The dialogue that this encourages are focused on learning and teaching. More specifically, differences amongst students and teachers are used to challenge existing thinking and practices in ways that are intended to encourage experimentation in order to foster more inclusive ways of working. In practical terms, this involves trios of teachers cooperating to find ways of including all children in their lessons, particularly those who are seen as hard to reach. Inclusive inquiry involves 3 phases: plan, teach, and analyse. In the first phase, each teacher chooses 3 children who will become the researchers. These students are then trained by their teachers in order to collect their classmates' views about learning and teaching. The information collected is analysed by the student researchers to inform the co-planning of a lesson by the teachers and student researchers that is then taught in each of the classes. In the next phase, these lessons are observed by the 2 partner teachers and by student researchers from the other 2 classes. And in the final phase, at the end of each of the 3 lessons, student researchers analyse what happened with their teachers in order to make modifications for the next time the lesson is taught. Their focus is on ensuring that all learners are included in the learning process. The research carried out within the project has shown that the use of inclusive inquiry can have a significant impact on the engagement of children in lessons.
Mas eu gosto mais quando tu tens que te esforçar para chegar ao resultado. Imagina que estás a subir uma montanha e tem muitos exercícios para completar a montanha e até lá acima. Então é mais divertido do que estar a fazer uma coisa que tu já sabes tudo.
Ich war irgendwie überrascht, dass ich ausgewählt wurde und es gefällt mir, dass ich anderen Kindern helfen kann und ja, es hat sich sehr gut angefühlt, als Forscherkinder zu sein.
This engagement was most striking in relation to those children who had taken on the role of researchers, particularly a change of their own perceptions of learners and an increase in their confidence.
Do you think it affected your confidence, this project?
Massively. I couldn't even talk in front of 2 people unless they were my close friends or family that I knew well. Like, now I could just talk to a million strangers like it was like my best friend.
That's what it is, attitude.
It is attitude.
So yeah, I'm just thinking one of my boys who was one of the researchers in the second round, he's just a lot more willing to try, or he'll happily come and kind of ask me, or kind of, you know, I'm really stuck on this bit, can you help me, rather than just sit there or kind of refuse to do it, or, you know, kind of giving up.
And I wasn't aware that that had such a big impact on them. And the way they took charge of planning the next lesson for their friends in the other classes, I was so amazed to see how they did really try to think what could be better, because it's not that easy to see when you are 10 years old.
Before, we had to stick to one thing. We get a piece of art, we do that and that only. But now, even today, we've had about 2 or 3 options of what we want to write, who we want to write as, and it just shows that it makes learning better.
The project had an impact on teachers as well. Teachers talked of the value of planning and reviewing lessons with their colleagues and with the student researchers.
Voll einsetzen, dass man echt zum Beispiel, keine Ahnung, ich mache eine Woche plan ich Deutsch, eine Woche du und wir machen es und dann tauschen wir einfach unsere Themen und wir bessern halt aus, was hat überhaupt nicht funktioniert und du machst das anders. Das wäre eigentlich voll sinnvoll und hilfreich, weil dann müsste eigentlich jeder nur die Hälfte vorbereiten. Aber es verlangt halt ganz viel zusammensitzen und zusammenreden und wie tun wir und was machen wir. Und ich glaube, deswegen passiert es dann in der Praxis doch.
Things that are seen as good practice, like in education in general, it's kind of questioned and challenged some of those things. For example, the tables. It's not meant to be best practice to have small children sat in rows in England. It's meant to be all sat in groups, but the children said they wanted to sit in rows.
They chose that,
and that's actually had an impact on their attention to their tasks.
E levou também momentos de reflexão pessoais e coletivos para podermos alcançar melhor o objetivo deles, todos os meninos participarem de forma igual, de aprender da melhor forma possível.
Having opportunities to see other teachers at work was particularly valued. This reminds us of the professional isolation that still exists among teachers in many schools.
I found it a source of enlightening to experience other schools and other school cultures in other countries, especially with the schools that we cooperate with, because it creates reflection on how we do things around here and the way we teach in an inclusive ways.
Außerdem gefällt mir bei diesem Projekt sehr gut, dass die Lehrerinnen und Lehrer zusammenarbeiten müssen, da sie die Stunden gemeinsam planen und gemeinsam reflektieren.
Having student perspectives on these issues helped to introduce a greater challenge to the discussions, such that sometimes the taken for granted assumptions of adults regarding what makes learning possible were challenged. This, in turn, made some teachers express surprise on what children can offer. In some instances, it also led teachers to become more sensitive regarding individual students and how they experience classroom life.
Eu fiquei muito surpreendida com certas observações dos alunos. Principalmente observações que eles fizeram em relação às aulas, coisas que disseram e que me tocaram. Algumas até pela humanidade como foi feito.
They're listening to the children. They're listening to the children's views, they're creating a dialogue, they're creating a discussion, and that is a beautiful counterbalance or counterpoint to everything that comes down.
And I think one of the very good things about this process was that even though we have a lot of experience working as a teacher, I have especially, I think I was pushed to a limit where I found out that it was really very much more important asking the children what they felt and how they thought about different things we were planning. And
well, it's been amazing. It's opened our eyes, I think, to what the children have to offer, and that it's a lot more. We've realised that they can give a lot more than we ever thought they could in terms of sort of planning their learning, and at that initial stage, how do they learn best? How can we help them to learn best? We've really moved forward as a school with the amount that we're involving the children in their learning, and we've learnt a lot from that, and I think as teachers we've got a different perspective now.
In order to use inclusive inquiry effectively, it is essential that teachers follow the instructions presented in the project materials closely, especially the Inclusive Inquiry Guide and the Preparing Students to be Researchers manual. Both these guides include step-by-step guidance for implementing the approach. In addition to these, there are a set of other materials that accompany these two main documents. The research we have described in this programme points to the untapped potential that exists within all schools for promoting more inclusive learning. It is important to note that the most important resources that are needed are already there within the classrooms, and what we have illustrated are just ways of making more effective use of these resources.
I think this film sums it up and shows a lot of different aspects. Yeah, and we will be open for questions, I guess, now, and not show you the results because we were talking about the results and we showed you the results in the film.
Thank you, Lisa and Barbara, for your presentations. As you said, the floor is open for your questions, your reflections, comments. You can raise your hand if you want to say something. You can also write in chat if this is more comfortable for you, whatever you prefer best. It would be nice to hear maybe if we have someone from research or someone from practice from schools, what are your thoughts, reflections, comments, questions for our lecturers? So feel free to speak up. Maybe while we wait for the audience, I can take the opportunity to ask you. You mentioned a lot about importance of the dialogue, about the importance of, let's say, developing these research competencies. Can you perhaps somehow connect it to what you are doing also within the HAND program in the schools? From the perspective of developing relational competencies and how it all can, in a way, let's say, what are the benefits for the students and for the teachers from these practices?
Yes, it's not so complicated. I think what you need for this dialogue between teachers and children is to do it in a mindful and in an appreciative way. So listen to the voices of children has much to do with mindfulness, has much to do with a caring environment. So I think the Hand in Hand project is just the one side, and the Reaching the Hard to Reach project is the other side. So from my point of view, they fit very well together. And the Hand in Hand project, it highlights this aspect of mindfulness and diversity awareness. And the Reaching the Hard to Reach project highlights the more aspect of doing lessons in a way which includes the children. Maybe Lisa can add some.
Yeah, the same thought. So my thought was the perfect project would be to combine these two projects and to teach children and teachers something about themselves first and how they enter into relations, and then to do the Reaching the Hard to Reach. That doesn't mean that it did not work without it, but I think it would intensify the dialogues and it would ease the process, because especially the students had some difficulties in entering the dialogue because they were afraid that teachers would not like them anymore, or things like that. So it was a development, and I think maybe some aspects of the Hand in Hand project could have helped in these issues. And we had another question in the chat.
Yes.
If your question is answered.
Thank you. Yeah.
Elizabeth was asking if you could do that concept in the secondary modern school as well, and the answer is yes, because it's based on a secondary school project. So there's another project that was before the Reaching the Hard to Reach project. I'm not sure if I can find it quickly, but I think I've got your email address because of the difficulties. So I can get back to you and send you the link to the previous project. Austria did not participate in. We just entered after the first project, but the aim of the Reaching the Hard to Reach project was to see if these things they developed for the secondary school could be somehow adapted to be implemented in the primary schools. It went exactly that way because they were not sure if it would work with younger children.
Thank you, Lisa. Anna?
Barbara, Lisa, thank you so much for a really nice presentation. I enjoyed it very much. I think it's such an excellent example what happens when the children are actually involved. Like not just when we're saying about engaging them, but like actually giving them voices. And it touched me in that sense, especially the feedbacks from students, from children. And I see it when asking about the intertwinement with this project and the hand in hand, I really see it on the same mission in this sense on how to create a dialogue where one is really, really heard and important. And I think how they felt in this creating the lessons together was they felt like important, and it's a really nice effort. So it's a nice project. Thank you for sharing.
Thank you, Anna.
Do we have some more questions? Rosetta? Oh, you are muted.
Hello, everybody. Thank you, Lisa and Barbara. It was a great presentation. Of course, it's been a great project. So congratulations to all of you and the whole team. Actually, in Albania, we've been trying to develop a new approach of peer-to-peer observation programs where teachers support each other while observing and then analyzing together as peers, not like a director observing a teacher. But it's amazing how you've involved kids in this analysis, observation analysis, reviewing the lesson together. So it was a great lesson learned. Probably this can be developed in not only in primary schools, but as Elisabetta asked and you, Lisa, just answered, of course, with secondary schools as well. So thank you so much. Actually, when I read the title of the webinar, I said, yes, this is something that all of us should learn more and work more on. So thank you so much, and lots of success in your future initiatives.
Thank you.
Thank you. It's good to hear that in other countries this idea is also growing and there are people working on that. It's really amazing, yeah, for us. Thank you.
And it helps the sustainability of this project. So it's so important that it's not like a huge amount of work in 3 years, like nearly killing you. And some schools continue to implement it, but it's that the aim is that all Europe or many different countries try to implement these concepts that were evaluated and are evidence-based. So I think that's really important.
Do we have any more questions? If not, I will also now take the opportunity to ask you one more. You were talking a lot about the impact on the students because you were working hard on empowering them to meaningfully participate, giving them voice, especially those belonging to marginalized groups. And also from the angle of the teachers, you mentioned how this method actually in a way helped them to somehow, let's say, not end, but maybe soften this professional isolation where every teacher is behind their doors doing their practices. They were collaborating, discussing, planning together. Do you have maybe information, did all these benefits for students, for teachers, maybe also have an effect on the school as a community, on the school culture and climate as well?
I can try to answer this, Barbara, if it's okay with you, and you add information. So I think within the school, the teacher collaboration benefited definitely, because you could observe your colleagues and you could enter in dialogue with your colleagues. We tried to do it in all the countries to build a network of schools that could exchange experiences, and that worked well in some countries, not so well in others. And but I think it would be great to have networks, so that you, because usually you're behind closed doors in your classroom, so you don't even know about the practice with your colleague, and then to the other side of the wall is teaching and doing, and you cannot exchange materials or whatever. And especially between schools, it's happening even less. So these networks would be really, really important. But it's often a lack of time to establish these networks, and because teachers are drowning in their work and drowning in the immediate problems, like violence in the school or something that needs to be solved now. So there is no only low energy sometimes to reach out to others and to exchange with others. And yeah, Barbara, what do you think?
Yeah, that's really a difficult question. The question of evidence, which evidence we have. And this is not so easy, because, and also the next question in the chat, did you, what was it? About the achievement of the children? If we know, we did not test the children, and it was not a randomized controlled trial. So what we have are rather experiences of the teachers, and not so methodological strong design. So we have the experiences, we have
these accounts. I was showing you the document. So yes, we have got the experiences of the students as well, like that something changed in their learning. I think you, in terms of making it measurable, you would need to wait to let the whole concept settle in the classroom. Barbara, what do you think? And then after some time, it has an impact on your learning, hence on your achievement and on your performance. But it was not the main goal of the project to measure this achievement, but we measured changes in learning by accounts from the children and the teachers.
So it was an action research project, not such an empirically strong design project. I think this might be a limitation. Yeah, but on the other hand, it's also important to try something in this way. And in the next
it enriched the project. It also enriched the project, because it could have never established these impacts on the students when you were only measuring. So because the measurement also does something to the students, and that they felt important. They somebody said the agency of their own learning, and I think that's the most important point. So they felt responsible for their learning, and they saw that it's not only sitting there and letting the teacher do something and they either listen or not. They are the agents of their learning, and that motivated them. That was no pressure, but it motivated them that they could change something. That's hard to measure, but easy to see.
Thank you, Lisa and Barbara. If we don't have any more questions, okay, I will then thank you once again for your detailed and inspiring presentation. I will thank you all participants for joining us and joining also in this short discussion. I will just once more remind you to check out our webpage. We have interesting interviews and webinars on these topics connected to the social-emotional competencies of teachers, supporting and developing them, as well as the diversity awareness. And wish for the end of this webinar, I just wish you the nice rest of the day. Thank you once again.